Good afternoon. Welcome to our City Council informational meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 27th. Welcome to everybody here in attendance in Carnegie and to anybody that might be watching online or on TV. We appreciate your attendance and interest in city government. Call our meeting to order. Today's last Tuesday of the month, so we have no 7 o'clock meeting today, so this is our only meeting for this Tuesday, and we're going to start with our staff report from Jim David, our Legislative and Operations Manager. Welcome, Jim.
Good afternoon, Councilor Karski and City Council. The National Citizen Survey continues to progress on schedule. Yesterday, the final wave of surveys was mailed and should arrive in local mailboxes later this week. We do expect survey results in late April or early May. Staff also continues to monitor the legislative session that is 2 weeks running. Just today, a couple of bills of note were introduced. House Bill 1131 is the governor's alternative highway funding bill. This bill would increase taxes and fees by almost $51 million. Included within this proposal is a $7.4 million increase in license plate fees. A portion of this revenue will directly benefit both cities and counties, and municipalities will also be eligible for a newly created bridge improvement grant, which is about $15 million per year. A competing bill, Senate Bill 1, was unveiled earlier this year by a summer committee led by Senator Valley. This bill increases taxes and fees by about $100 million. 3/4 of this revenue would be allocated towards the state highway system, with the remaining amount going towards county and township roads. According to the Municipal League, municipalities would be eligible for more transportation funds under the governor's bill as it currently stands. And then Senate Bill 102, this significantly changes how tax increment financing or TIF districts are funded. Under this proposal, taxing jurisdictions that did not initiate a TIF would have the option whether or not to participate. If the jurisdiction decides not to participate and a TIF is created, the non-participating jurisdiction would receive the incremental increase in valuation while the TIF is active. We should have a better idea or a better picture of pending legislation by next week, February 3rd and 4th, which is the last day to introduce an individual bill or a committee bill. And then finally, just a quick reminder, Municipal Day at the Legislature is Tuesday next week, February 3rd, and Sioux Falls Day is Wednesday, February 18th. Please let me know if you will or will not attend this event. And then also the Chamber did announce their legislative coffees for this session. They're going to be on Saturday, February 7th and Saturday, February 21st. They begin at 9 a.m. at the downtown Hilton Garden Inn. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Looks like you did a good job. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. We're going to go to committee reports. Our first one, Fiscal Committee, Councilor Jameson.
Sure, thank you. We just had one item that we covered. It was a report or an update essentially on a couple of sewer projects that Public Works is working on. $29 million worth of work that will occur in 2015. The city went through a big review of the sewer system after the collapse and has identified projects to get done, and they're going to be getting them done in 2015. So, and that was a pretty short meeting.
Thank you very much, Councilor. And we have Urbanized Development Commission, the UDC. Councilor Rolfing attended that. Councilor? Yeah, thank you. We had a very interesting meeting. Number of things that we did. First, we appointed new members to the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, which help bring information to the UDC. The uniform planning work, there were a couple of amendments that went to that, minor changes in what's going to be done in the next year. And then we also went over an annual list of obligated projects, they call it, things that are on schedule and things that we need to, that are on the agenda and things we needed to look at again. The Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP revisions, there was 2 revisions in that, minor things that we needed to be carried forward to this year from last year. We also looked at the Transportation Plan's Public Participation Plan, and we approved that, and what that does is says here are the steps that need to be taken
when we have a program such as the 26th Street Exchange on I-229, so that we know that there has to be so many public meetings, there has to be so many other meetings, and the timeline is set up so that we have good participation from the public and get their input on it. We also then had a presentation on the 26th Street and 26th and I-229 exchange. What they've come up with makes a lot of sense. It's probably the least expensive way to get it done, but still achieve our goals. So I'm sure we'll be getting another report on that as City Council too. But it looks really good, and hopefully it'll work as we go forward, and make sure that we get better traffic flow out there on 26th Street and the interstate. And then we had a little update on proposed legislation, as Jim David just gave to you. They told us about the need for about $100 million of allocation for highways and bridges, et cetera, throughout the state. And the governor at this point has looked at about 50 million. I don't know what they're going to do, but you know, we're all waiting to see what's going to happen up in Pierre with that. We do need to make sure we keep up with our bridges. One of the things that we're concerned with in Sioux Falls, of course, is one of the bills has a little clause in it that might affect Highway 100, and we want to make sure that we stay on top of that. So that's about it.
Questions for Councilor Rolfing? Councilor Jameson?
I also attended the meeting. I just was going to add one more item that I don't think the councilor covered, was a Minnehaha County Pavement Management Program. I don't know if you covered that, but it's pretty interesting. They have a truck that is equipped with all these sensors, and they hired this company to come through and drive through all the roads in the county and assess them and give them essentially a value. And what's interesting is that there's about all the roads in the Minnehaha County area score, I think on average about 70, and which is good comparative to the other counties in the state. But what the problem is that they need about $5 million worth of annual funding just to stay on top of the maintenance. And then that's good for the county. But today they've only got about $4 million. So what you can see happens is they just slowly slip and slip. And that's part of the Senate Bill number 1 that's out there, as well as the governor's plan, is to help fix that eroding problem. So that's another item we covered.
Councilor Rolfing?
If I could add to that, I believe that we're looking at using that same type of program in the city of Sioux Falls too, to get an idea of how good our roads are, which ones need to be fixed first, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was really an amazing report that they gave back on how the road, they can literally take it and say, you know, the roads, it's going to decrease and it's going to flatten out and get really bad. But they can tell us then, according to how long it's been there and how long it's lasted, et cetera, when the next maintenance needs to be done on it, and then project into the curve, and you can get this thing all planned out very, very nicely. And so it'll be worth it when we get it done.
All righty. Thank you, Councilor. City Council open discussion. Any councilors want to have a topic they want to bring to the table? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. I think probably most of you saw the front page of the Argus Leader today about an administrative judge in the city of Sioux Falls rendering a decision in regard to the ambulance service issue. We're supposed to start dealing with that next Monday, and then the following Tuesday be voting on it, it's my understanding. But I guess my concern is that I understand that this is going to be appealed. This administrative judge ruling is going to be appealed to circuit court. And that being the case, maybe we should consider delaying this until we kind of find out what the circuit court actually says about this issue. Does anybody have any other opinion about
Councilor
that?
Kiley?
I would recommend that we do not delay, because you could be delaying indefinitely if you use that tactic, and I think the process was sound, that we need to follow through with it at this point, and I guess let the other side do what they feel they need to do.
Well, I guess my concern is that, you know, the last meeting we had, I believe it was, we delayed the ordinance dealing with dumpsters, shielding of dumpsters. And we all agreed with that, and it passed quite easily. This is something much more important than dumpsters. And once again, I mean, was anybody really surprised that the administrative judge ruled in favor of the city? I mean, this is a judge that's, you know, selected by the city, paid by the city. So I think we ought to wait until we get something maybe a little more, a judge a little more experienced in with the state and a little more objective about this.
Councilor Rolfing.
I don't even know what to say in this situation because, first of all, I'm wondering where Councilor Staggers got his information that this was going to be appealed.
No, I just said my
no,
understanding.
You said that
there has been some.
No, you said that you've been made aware or something like that this is probably going to be repealed. Anyway, the process went on for with almost 2 years now, a year and a half. All the time that has been spent, all the safeguards, everything there we need to follow through on this and get it done. Number one, because May 1st, we don't have a contract. We do not have a contract May 1st, and that's not very far away. If we start delaying everything, all of a sudden that can be up on us very quickly, and that wouldn't give our selected medical or ambulance service time to get set up and roll. So I think I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is also.
The way I understand it is we will have a first reading on February 2nd. It is going to be on the agenda. Second reading scheduled for February 1st. February 2nd, Monday, February 2nd. And then Tuesday, February 9th will be the second reading. If any counselor wants to make a motion to delay a second reading and get a second, that is perfectly fine. That's the process we use. Counselor Anderson.
I was going to say, we have leadership meetings on Friday morning. We do meet with the city attorney. I think if we just ask him for his advice, I think that would be the proper way to go about it. And if he states at that time he thinks it should be pulled, then our very next meeting, we have that opportunity to do that. If not, then we just let the process continue.
Counselor Kiley.
And I also take issue at questioning the integrity of the judge that was involved in the process. I think that was unnecessary and uncalled for.
Well, I wasn't questioning the integrity. No, I wasn't.
From my standpoint, for what I heard, it certainly sounded like you did.
Well, you also have to take a look at the reality of it, too. And my experience with this kind of situation, I just wasn't surprised at all. And I think a lot of other people were not surprised either.
All righty. Any other open discussion? Okay, we'll move into our first presentation. Our only presentation, the Indoor Aquatic Center Project Update, and I believe the mayor is going to kick us off. Welcome, Mayor.
Well, councilors and citizens of Sioux Falls, we are just chomping at the bit to have this discussion with you and to relay this presentation with you today. In my 4.5 years as your mayor, I can't remember a presentation that we've put this much time and effort into just to tell you all the good things that have been going on since our groundbreaking for our new indoor aquatics facility. And with that in mind, let's just kick it off. My intent was just to kind of give you a little flavor for the project goals in terms of getting this indoor aquatics facility built. First of all, of course, we want it to be a top-notch patron experience for everybody, and we believe that after what you see today, we're going to do that and more. We're certainly going to engage the community in the process. This is just part of it, and we will keep you up to date along this journey, just like we did with the event center. This is a multi-purpose facility, and what you're going to hear about today are some of those ways that indeed it will be a multi-purpose facility. It is accessible to all. I know that during some of the discussion, during some of the debate, there was this feeling that, just certain special interest groups are going to benefit from this facility. That couldn't be much farther from reality or much farther from the truth. Young or old, rich or poor, black or white, no matter where you live. In fact, even if you don't live in the city of Sioux Falls, I think you're going to find that this indoor aquatics facility is going to benefit all. We want to pay for this with cash. That is something that we just have been intent on doing, and we're still intent on doing. And Council, we hope that you support us in that effort today, as well as Spellerberg Park. That was a big part of the discussion and still needs to be a big part of that discussion. We want to make sure that not only do we serve all of Sioux Falls, but we want the Spellerberg Park neighbors, that neighborhood, cheering for us along the way as well. And then, just like we learned with the Event Center, there are virtues, there are benefits to securing private support as we build these public facilities as well, and we'll tell you more about that. Councilor Karski, councilors, I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Good afternoon, City Council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. As we began to launch this project, we've learned much from some due diligence that we've encountered upon. And as part of that due diligence, we performed site visits to aquatic centers that were similar in size to our planned facility here in Sioux Falls. Those cities included Edmond, Oklahoma, and Lawrence, Kansas, and the University of Iowa. What was nice about visiting these 3 indoor aquatic centers with our design team was that they were all 3 constructed at different times. One was recently opened, one had been open about 3 to 4 years, and one had been open for about 15 years. So we could see the different spectrum of the ages of those particular facilities. What we learned by talking to those different, what we learned in talking to those different user groups and facility operators was that you need to make sure that you size the recreational pool to meet your community's needs. Some of the facility operators that we talked to said in hindsight, we wished we'd have built that facility a little bit bigger. Doesn't quite meet the demand that we have. We also found that quality material selection is vital. For example, some facilities were dealing with significant rust issues because of the high humidity environments, and so it's critical that we pay attention to that. And we also learned that the multi-purpose rooms at these other facilities were heavily used. Part of our due diligence also included adding pool and building experts to our design team. I would tell you that they've been instrumental in providing industry standards on pool sizes and depths for our proposed uses. And they've also helped us to really maximize the usage and the square footage to make sure absolutely no space is wasted within this facility. One example of this is that our water slide is not completely enclosed within the building. As you will see on the upcoming slides, entry and exit portions of our water slide is actually inside the building. This eliminates the need to build that additional square footage, and that means we also don't have to heat and cool the space for the life of that building. Another example of no wasted space is that the raised seating areas in the 50-meter pool area are located on the exterior of the building the 50-meter pool area, the additional space underneath that raised seating area are areas that we're going to be using for multi-purpose and storage. And then the other thing that we're doing is that we're using the I'm off track here. Another example of no wasted space is that the mechanical systems that will be associated with this pool, we're putting on the exterior of the building instead of the interior building, again, to reduce the amount of square footage. These pool and building experts are also providing guidance on the specialized mechanical, electrical, and plumbing requirements. And as you can probably imagine, in high humidity environments, like an indoor aquatic center, we need to be carefully selecting these systems to ensure the comfort of those using that building. We've also used a construction manager and an owner's representative, which has been a sound investment on a project of this scope. They are providing value engineering on literally every aspect of this project. They're also providing updated cost estimates and construction inflation projections. We'd now like to walk you through the proposed features of the new indoor aquatic center. The pictures on these slides are just representative pictures of the features we're about to discuss. And please realize that the images are for illustration purposes only, and the final product will more than likely vary from what you see tonight. But it's, again, for illustration purposes. The picture in the middle is an example of a zero-depth pool. It's similar to a beach entry with a depth that starts at 0 and gets deeper as you wade out into that pool. This is a great amenity for families and especially those with young children. The picture on the left is a current channel. The current channel is very popular for all ages. The teens love it, and it does wonders for the water walkers with orthopedic therapy needs. The recreational pool will have 3 lap lanes and a large play feature to keep the kids of all ages entertained, and it will also feature a water slide and a lily pad crossing feature which challenges users to make it to the other side. This image reflects the overall floor plan for the recreational pool and shows where the amenities we just reviewed are located within this pool. If you remember in the earlier slide when we talked about due diligence we performed, this is one of the spaces that we felt like it needed to be larger than what was originally shown in the toolbox option as part of the aquatic facility master plan. We expect that this space is going to be heavily used, and we wanted to make sure we did it right the first time. Now on to the Salute to the Veterans Therapy Pool. This facility would have a step and ramp entry along with a lift. It too will be multi-purpose by offering warm water therapy, swimming lessons, and general recreational swimming. We will also be able to regulate the temperature of the water separately from the other pools. Here's an overall view of the therapy pool that will serve veterans, seniors, and all with therapy needs. This image is the 50-meter pool. The dimensions will be 50 meters by 25 yards in width. One of the comments we heard over and over again in our aquatic facility master planning process, all the community users that we saw out there, the facility providers that already have lap lanes, they all said, we need more lap lanes. They're already full. I can't get lap time. And so with this configuration, we would be able to have 10 50-meter lanes or 20 25-yard lanes. It will also have 4 diving boards with 2 1-meter boards and with 2 3-meter boards. As you will see in this image, there are also 2 movable bulkheads that will allow us to divide the pool into 1, 2, or 3 bodies of water. And then finally, you'll see in the foreground the elevated seating for 500. This slide illustrates how the 50-meter pool will provide great flexibility for programming purposes. In this configuration, you could have diving on one end, lap swimming in the middle, and open swim or even water aerobics on the far end all at the same time. So you can see the number of simultaneous uses are many. In addition to the pools that we just reviewed, there are also other public spaces. There will be 2 multi-purpose rooms that can be used individually, or they can be opened up so you have one larger room that can be used at the same time. This would be ideal for water safety and lifeguard training classes, and it would also be available for community meetings, birthday parties, and special events. The front entry and main corridor into the building will offer restrooms, locker rooms, concessions, and a lounge area to not only support the users of the aquatic facility, but also for those using the sledding hill. This image shows how all the amenities come together on the main level. You will note that we do plan to design this facility for a spray ground or a splash pad. However, we want you to know that we will be bidding it as an ad alternate. Our new indoor aquatic center will be flexible. It will be durable. It will be built for the future capacity of our community, and it will have high quality materials and equipment, and it will have a sound economic impact. Let's talk about flexibility of this facility. This facility will provide opportunities for the entire family. Recreational and lap swimming, swimming lessons, therapy, fitness, water safety training, water slides, play features, diving, and more. It will also have 3 to 5 bodies that can be used all at the same time due to the flexibility we talked about with the movable bulkheads. And yes, it will be open year-round. As it relates to durability and quality, as we mentioned before in our earlier slides, materials and system selections is critical. Here are a few things that we are looking at as we go about designing this facility. As I mentioned earlier, rust-resistant materials are a must. So we're looking at aluminum and fiberglass and those things that don't rust because of the high humidity environments. We're also focusing on life cycle costs in our mechanical systems. One good example is our filter system. While one system may cost less up front because there are options for different systems, the payback on a more expensive system may be the best value due to the operational efficiencies that we can achieve with that more expensive system. So the payback is there. LED lighting is also being used to keep utility costs as low as possible. And again, our emphasis has been to think long-term to minimize maintenance, repairs, and operational cost. Each unique space will also have separate mechanical systems, and as the mayor mentioned earlier, one of our goals for this facility is to be LEED certified. We think the equipment, materials, and finishes should be reflective of the strength of our people and our city, and our community will be proud of the finished product, just like our event center. The capacity. The capacity of this facility is a very important consideration. We will not make the same mistakes others have made by building it too small. We are a growing city and demand will be high. Other area indoor facilities offer limited public access, and this facility will serve future generations. The economic impact of this facility will be significant. The facility will draw use from the metropolitan area and beyond. Special events will generate millions. It's a great investment in a core neighborhood. Area retail will receive a big economic boom. And again, it's another reason to live, work, and play in Sioux Falls. So with that, now I'd like to turn it over to Tracy Turbach to talk about funding. Tracy?
Thank you, Don. Good afternoon. Last time we were before the council to talk about this project was back in September. That was when the council was asked to approve the contract with TSP as the project architect and the contract with Sioux Falls Construction as the construction manager for the project. And as you can see from Don's segment of the presentation, there's a lot of hard work that's taken place since that time. Don talked about the due diligence and the site visits, among other parts of the due diligence effort. The schematic design process that's taken place has involved really a tremendous number of hours by the project team to bring us to this point. And Don has really done a nice job of providing an overview of that due diligence effort and the results of that schematic design process by describing what's in the facility. And if you noticed on the title slide of the presentation, the words "building it right the first time" were part of the title. That is really so important on this project. It's just so critical. We only get one crack at this. There is no do-over when you're building a facility like this or a project like this, this magnitude. And we all want and expect this facility to meet the community's needs, not only today, but for many, many years, in fact, decades into the future. The project team is very confident that the results of that due diligence process and the schematic design process that we've been through over the last several months that you've heard described here today will deliver on that critical, important point of building it right the first time. Based upon the due diligence work that's been completed and upon that schematic design process, the building it right the first time, this aquatic center will require an investment of $23.7 million. I'd like to walk you through those numbers. As you'll recall, the council previously budgeted or allocated $19.8 million for this project. So achieving the goal of building it right the first time will require an additional investment of $3.9 million. And on the slide, you can see this is how we propose to fund that additional investment. Capital dollars are currently available, $1.6 million that resulted from surplus sales tax, second penny sales tax revenues. In other words, for 2014, sales tax revenues came in higher than what was anticipated, and so those dollars are in our capital fund and are not currently identified or obligated for any other project. In addition, there's $1.2 million that's currently available. Those are dollars that were remaining from projects that were completed in 2014 that came in under budget or were completed under budget. The city received, in addition to that, a $500,000 gift from the Bradfeld family or estate, and that gift was restricted for recreational parks and recreational facilities, so we're proposing to utilize those dollars for this project as well. And those first three bullet items, those first three amounts are dollars that are available today in our capital fund. The remaining $600,000 we're proposing to fund by reprioritizing other projects within the Parks Capital Improvement Plan in 2015 and 2016. Now, it's important to understand that we're not proposing that any parks projects would be eliminated. We have identified some projects, lower priority projects, that would be moved back by a year or two in order to come up with that $600,000 for the Aquatic Center project. So those four items, four sources, add up to $3.9 million, and that will get us to the total investment of $23.7 million to do this project right the first time. We'll be back before the council next month with a supplemental appropriation ordinance to add $3.3 million to the budget for this project. That represents the total of those first three bullet points there. The surplus revenues from 2014, the savings that we've achieved on other projects, and the Bradfeld estate gift. The remaining $600,000, as I mentioned, would come from the reprioritization of the 15 and 16 parks projects. There's about half of that that we've identified within the 15 plan that would be transferred to this project, and the other half of about $300,000 would be presented to the council when the 2016 capital plan is presented to you later this year. So that's how we would intend to achieve that full investment. So what are some of the reasons behind the additional investment to build it right the first time, as I've been saying? It really boils down to these four bullet points. The primary reasons include the additional space that Don talked about within the Aquatic Center allocated to provide more water surface area. And that's really a direct result of that due diligence process, learning from the mistakes of others. I don't think any of us want to be associated with a project that is undersized on the day it opens. And so that's just critical, and the increased capacity in the recreational pool is certainly a direct result of that. The therapy pool was not part of the original toolbox concept that Don talked about, so that is additional water surface space that's been added to the project. Also in the due diligence, one of the things that we learned, Don talked on a number of points about the types and quality of materials and equipment that go into a facility like this. We believe it's very prudent to pay a little more to get that greater value and the longer life out of the facility when we're making this kind of an investment. So that's also contributing to that additional investment. And last, the construction costs are going up. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. They will continue to go up. They're increasing at a rate far faster than what we might see in the paper as an inflation rate for consumers. Construction is very, very active here in Sioux Falls, and so those costs will continue to escalate at a rapid pace. this is truly a case where time is money. If we delay the project any further, of course, the construction will most certainly continue to increase. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Kendra, and she will walk us through some of the next steps in the process. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Kendra Simmonsma, Chief Project Manager. I get the privilege to lead another project that's an important initiative for the City of Sioux Falls, so I'm happy to be in front of you all and happy to make this project continue to move forward. So really what I'm going to just talk about just briefly on this slide is really what's happening now. What's the next things that we're planning? And as Tracy mentioned, we'd like to come back to the council here in February to do a capital surplus supplemental ordinance. And so that's really the very next thing that we need to do. And then design is in progress. I think Don did a good job going through where we're at today with schematic design, and we're continuing to move forward with design. And we expect with our partners with TSP and Councilman Hunsaker to be through design by the end of March. We are committed to community stakeholder involvement, not only with a citizen committee group, but also coming to you on a regular basis. So we do intend to come back on a quarterly basis. And so you can see that we'll be back in April, and then again in July, October, and then just so on and so forth as the year progresses. And then we also will begin pool construction this spring. As the frost comes out of the ground, we anticipate with Sioux Falls Construction that they will be moving dirt in April. So we're really excited about that milestone. And then another big construction milestone would be by the end of this year, 2015, the building will be enclosed, and that's really important to help save on winterization construction costs. We're still on track to have the building open for the public to use in fall of 2016. So with that, I just want to bring the mayor up to close the presentation, and we can answer your questions then.
Councilors, again, thank you so much for your time today. We truly appreciate it. This is certainly a topic we could have spent hours talking about today. And it is just, again, another step towards educating not only you, but also the public about making this investment and finally making this a reality for this town. Things to remember as we move forward. Again, the people of this town have spoken loud and clear. This is something that they've wanted a long time, and now we have the ability and the opportunity to actually make it happen. The due diligence is a very, very important part of the process. If you can figure out what others have done and not done correctly, you certainly don't want to do those same things in your town. And that's something that we certainly don't want to do, is make those same mistakes that others have made. We've talked about that today. Goodness gracious, if we would have built this indoor aquatic facility a year ago or 2 years ago, the odds are good we would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. Looking back is easy. Looking forward is the tough part. Making that investment now is the prudent thing to do, and that is exactly what we're recommending. We could have easily not done something like a therapy pool. But again, whether you're a veteran or if you're a senior or if you're someone with special therapy needs, as we said, this is a pool for everybody. And this investment in a therapy pool, even if it wasn't part of the original discussion, it needs to be part of the discussion now. The town is booming, as you know, Council. We've got another press conference coming up, and I'll give you a little scoop. There are people moving into our town, and they're going to keep moving into our town because of the quality of life investments that we're making, and this is just another one. But with that growing economy and population, again, we want to make sure that we do this right the first time. Investing in it to make sure that it's the right size is important. Of course, you're confident, I'm confident, the city's confident. We're going to do this right, all the while living within our means. The proposal that we've submitted to you today does not add more debt. We're able to do it with cash or with prioritizing some events within our Parks Department and ultimately getting stuff done for the people that we serve. We are looking forward to coming back to you again in April or earlier, of course. But for now, we definitely want to open up for any questions that you have on any topic. Councilor Chair Karski, again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all those that presented a lot of information, and I'm sure we got more than one or two questions. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I was wondering, when were the visits to Edmond, Oklahoma, Lawrence, Kansas, and Iowa City, when did these take place?
I believe those were in September that we toured those facilities.
Okay, I guess my question is, we're talking about we want to get these things right. And as a result of those visits, it's apparent that you came to the conclusion we have to have a larger facility. Is that kind of fair to say?
I think the takeaway was that make sure that you size your facility to the demand that you expect for that facility.
I guess my question is, before we had the vote in April on this facility, why didn't we do more diligence so that the people of Sioux Falls would have had a better idea of how much this was going to cost? Because this is quite an increase from what they were told during the election. I believe during the election they were told around $19.5 million. Now we're up to $23.7 million. And the $3.9 million is a rather large increase. How do we know we're not going to have another increase?
Well, I would just step back and share with you that both of the cost estimates for the indoor and the outdoor options that were discussed during our educational presentations, they came out of the aquatic facility toolbox options and the aquatic facility master plan. And so the resources through Councilman Hunsaker and Associates and their master planning efforts and their pool experience is really what drove those cost estimates based on those individual toolbox options. And for example, in the case of the $7.5 million for the outdoor facility, that too was used from that aquatic facility master plan. And so from our perspective, at least we were using the same document to determine the estimates.
But once again, the citizens were told one number, and now we have a dramatically increased number. How about the subsidy? We were told, given some numbers on the subsidy for the facility each year. I didn't see any numbers here. What's the subsidy going to be if it's going to be a larger facility?
Yeah, the original aquatic facility master plan on the large indoor aquatic center toolbox option identified $692,000 annual subsidy.
Beginning, I think it was.
Yeah, that is the projection that was made as part of our quarterly updates to the City Council and part of our budget process for 2016. We will be working on those operational costs and revenue projections. So we'll be able to provide more information on that at a later time.
So do you know just about when we might learn some more about the subsidy thing?
Well, typically in June, I believe, is when the City Council likes to see revenue projections for 2016, and so working towards that goal.
Okay. Councilor Staggers, I'm going to take questions for other councilors. We'll get back. Councilor Urbanbach.
Thank you. Thank you, Don and Mayor and team. I appreciate your work. Couple of things. Talk first of all about the therapy pool. It wasn't part of the conversation prior to the election, but it did come out of conversations that happened during the election and after, in terms of the community's desire to be involved with patients and clients of the VA next door. Can you talk about why we're adding that and what's it's a significant expense. Can you talk about that, Don?
Yeah, it really is something that we heard during our aquatic focus group meetings that we held as part of our master planning process. You know, obviously the adjacency to the Veterans Hospital we think is a nice connection. And where can you go in this community if you have arthritis or if you have a bad hip or if you need some physical therapy that needs water therapy in a raised temperature setting? Where can you do that if you're not a member of a private health club? And so to be able to have that available to the general public, we felt was really valuable.
Two other questions, actually, if I might. One, talk about that idea of better equipment and better materials. One of the things that threw me is an early slide where you highlight the idea of rust-resistant material. Talk about why that's important and where did that idea come from? I mean, it's a pool where there's lots of water. Why would we not do that?
Yeah, I would tell you that especially on that facility that was 15 years old, we were shocked at the amount of rust that facility has undergone. And obviously, we have the benefit of hindsight. They built their building, and then we got to learn from it. But in that case, there was significant rust throughout their mechanical room, for example. It was significant. We even saw at a pool that just opened, their stainless steel was already rusting, and it just opened. And so it was very clear to us that that's a very important thing that you have to consider as you design these facilities.
That seems like one of those duh things to me, but I'll kind of let that go. My third and final question then is, this is new information for me, and when I'm looking at the spreadsheet that Tracy presented to us, talk about the Bradfeld gift. I mean, this seems like just the beginning possibly of more private partnerships, but who is that family and where did that come from and what's that about?
Yeah, I would say it's about 18 months ago, the city received a gift from the Loretta Bradfeld estate, and there were several beneficiaries to that estate, and we happened to be one of them. And there was $500,000 that was unrestricted that was to be targeted, and we receive for Parks and Recreation. And so we've been in contact with that family and talked to them about using their gift for this particular project. And they're excited about it. And we also want to take an opportunity to work closely with them to recognize the Loretta Bradfeld family for their contribution.
Very cool. Thank you.
Councilor Alfing.
Yes. Don, come on, there, Don. Speak to me about or tell me a little bit more about LEED certified. That seems to be that would really be tough, a LEED certified indoor swimming facility. And what level of LEED certification are we shooting for?
That's probably a better question for TSP, our architect. Sean Irvin is the lead architect through TSP, and he's probably better qualified to answer that. Sean?
Hi, Sean Irvin with TSP. Councilors, thank you for the question, Rex. It's for LEED certified, which is the base level LEED certification, and that was identified as a level that would be appropriate for proper sustainability and meeting with some of the other cities' goals to try and be sustainable about building their facilities, things like that. So we're going for that base amount, and it looks like we're in pretty good shape to be able to hit that at our early projections.
Super.
Thanks for the question.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, can you tell us how much that becoming LEED certified is going to cost, approximately? And what level are we going to be LEED certified? I know there are different levels.
LEED certified is the minimal level.
Okay.
And then the next level above that is LEED silver, and then gold and platinum, and there's other levels. LEED certified is the base level.
Okay.
As far as specific cost for LEED, there's a lot of things that we do during design that are specifically sustainably driven, because that's in the best interest of the city to build things that last for a long time, that have good life cycle costs and those kind of analyses, which we would do whether it was LEED or not. So it's a little hard to actually identify what is the price tag to put that LEED plaque in the lobby. But because it is such a priority for the city to be sustainable about the way they do things, it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. And that price tag, as I said, is very difficult to identify an exact dollar amount.
Would it be 500,000 maybe, or $1 million, or?
Can't really identify that specifically, because you're comparing a LEED certified project with potentially one that is a baseline project that has no consideration for long-term life cycle cost analyses, which typically you would not want to do on a building. You want to make sure that the life cycle cost makes sense. The city is going to have this building for a lot of years, and we want to make sure that it's a good investment 40 years down the road as it was the day you built it. So that's why we build a lot of those things in, whether it's LEED or not. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but also it would have been important to really know how much additional that's going to cost. I mean, when you build something, you want to have as many numbers as possible. And it would have been nice to have had a rough number. I know it's very difficult from what you were saying. It's very difficult, I know that, but there is additional cost.
Yep, there is some cost, but in this case, it makes sense because of the city's priorities to be sustainable in their approach. Okay?
Don, did you have something to add to that?
What's that?
Oh, Arnie.
Thank you.
Yeah, the thing that I would add to your question, Councilmember Staggers, about will there be additional dollars requested above and beyond what we're already requesting? And I would tell you that we feel very confident in that $23.7 million number. The reason for our confidence is that we've gotten to that schematic design level of design. And the other thing you should be aware of is that we also have the construction manager's contingency in there, as well as the project contingency. And so we're very confident in those numbers, and we do not plan to be back here for any additional requests for funding.
I guess if I could just say one quick thing, Don. When the event center was built, before the vote took place, we told the public $115 million. And we're trying to stay to that $115 million. Here we said 19.5, and now we're up to 23.7. So if we could do it for the event center, have a pretty good number for the event center, well, why didn't we have a better number for the pool?
Yep, Councilor Staggers, that's a really good question and a point I'd like to clarify for everyone. If you remember, when we did the event center, we hired Sink Homes Deathless and Mortensen Construction to give us the number before the vote. Mm-hmm. And we did not do that in this project. So that's the big difference. They gave us, Sink Homes Deathless and Mortensen Construction gave us a schematic design number before the vote for the event center. That was not the way this project worked. So that's the difference.
Well, that's a significant difference.
Councilor Kiley?
Thank you. I really do like the concept of doing it right. That's how I personally like to try to take on projects myself, especially my home projects. And doing it right involves the development or the inclusion of a therapy pool, which I think can benefit countless numbers of citizens, including our returning vets, our aging vets. And we have a rather high population of individuals in the city with special needs due to the fact that Sioux Falls is, by South Dakota standards, a medical mecca. And so these individuals, including my sister, could have greatly benefited from the therapy pool. So I like the concept of doing it right, and again, including the increased capacity and the quality of materials, and I think that's where the LEED certification plays a very important role. We could build it to minimum standards. We could even save more money by building it substandard. But in the long run, you're going to pay for that because you haven't made that initial investment. So I think, hopefully, with the LEED certification, the savings will be seen actually in the future. Furthermore, I like the concept of using our surplus funds and savings that we have available to us, and especially appreciate the gift from the Bradfeld family. That is just wonderful, and hopefully we can develop more public and private relationships such as that throughout this project as we continue forward. With that said, I guess I would like to just, we've had a look at the facility, we haven't looked outside the facility, and I would just like to place an emphasis on the parking for the facility, that we can do all we possibly can to maximize on-site parking so that we can reduce issues with traffic or traffic pedestrian related issues, and also minimize some of the neighbors' concerns that they had as well too. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Tracy Turback, please. Tracy, during our last budget cycle, when we were making some amendments in that, you advised and warned the council about using surplus funds, and that some of the consequences that could happen as far as going under that 25%. Am I correct in my statement there?
We talked about that at budget time. That, of course, is the general fund reserve. We're talking about here the capital fund, which does not ordinarily carry a 25% reserve. We don't carry any amount of targeted reserve within the capital fund. So the concern that I expressed at budget time was really related to the general fund, where we do try to maintain at least a 25% reserve. That's right.
And then about every time this year, we talk about those surplus funds and everything. I guess I'm just sort of disappointed that before we even knew what surplus funds were available, we're getting this. And there's no discussion about what options that could have been done with these funds. And over the last 2 years now, if we do approve this, you know, we're talking instead of 19.8 million, we're talking 21.6 million. So I guess I'm just a little concerned on, you know, how we're moving money around and doing, it's not that I'm against this. I'm just concerned about how we're putting money out front here and saying publicly this is what we want to do with it before the council's even had a choice or any options to discuss. So that's just something I wanted to bring up.
And I guess my response to that would be we've been on the track of doing this project, not only doing it right as we've been talking about, but also doing it as prudently as we can. And we've got the opportunity to do this project without borrowing money for it. And I think the proposal that you've seen here today is just consistent with that goal that we've had for some time now of doing this project without having to sell bonds to finance it. I just think that's a very prudent thing to do. Could those dollars go to other things? Certainly, I guess that's true of any dollars that we spend and that you folks appropriate year in and year out. But this is obviously a very high priority project for the community. It has very broad support in the community. We saw that when the outdoor pool was voted on, that we don't want another outdoor pool. We want to go with an indoor facility. I think people are very excited about it. And I think the financial plan that we've put together here, again, is just a very, very prudent thing to do for the community. We clearly have the dollars to do it, and I certainly hope that you will support that when we bring it to you next month.
No, I guess just to reply to that, doing it right, I agree with, but doing it right also means communicating with the council on these changes before you bring it public.
Councilor Anderson Jr., our job as we're representing the people of this town is we're going to communicate as best we can. We're going to do our due diligence, and we're going to make recommendations on how to move this city forward. That's what we're doing here today. We're doing that, and we're having dialogue. It sounds like we're even having a little debate. That's what's appropriate. That's how government works in Sioux Falls. That's how we find common ground, make some compromise, and actually get things done. Councilor Anderson Jr., if you've got a better plan, and there are certainly different alternatives out there. We could certainly build it cheaper, like Councilor Stagger sounds like you would like to do. Councilor Anderson Jr., it sounds like you may want to utilize some of those excess capital dollars to maybe tackle some other needs in this town. You can certainly do that as well, and as a team we can. This is the recommended plan that we're recommending today. And the one thing that I think I'd love to just share with you, Councilor Anderson Jr., is that even when you look back at all the incredible work that not only the city team did with the last budget, but also, not to minimize in any way, the incredible amount of work that you did as a council with that recommended budget. We're going to get all that done. We are. Everything's going to get done except we may have to move back a couple of lower priority projects about a year in our Parks Department. Other than that, we're going to realize a dream that we've been talking about for generations. We're going to move this city forward. We're going to invest in quality of life. We're going to create economic development, and we're going to find ways to work together to make this community better. So, Councilor Anderson Jr., this isn't the end of the dialogue. This is just another step in the dialogue, and we look forward to working with you to ultimately, make something good happen for this town.
May I reply?
Yes, Councilor,
Thank you.
please.
Mayor, number one, I didn't say I was against this plan. I didn't say I had another plan, okay? Because this has been just given to us, there's questions that have to be done here. We're not a rubber stamp group, and I want to make sure that when we ask the questions, and like I said, I brought up my concerns about the communication on this, especially that large of a change. I just thought that it would have been better if it would have been communicated to the council before this was done publicly, because now it's more of a sales plan here is what I see, instead of a good communication between the council and your administration. And that's all I was stating on that.
Councilor, just curious, under what type of format would have you wanted this communicated to the council if it's not done
Well, like I
publicly?
said, most of the time, this time of year, we're already starting to discuss the options that we can utilize with the extra money. And that didn't happen this year. We were just given this. That's all.
As one option,
And that
yes, sir.
with this big of a change, with this much of a change, and they've already identified the monies that they're going to need, I just thought that that should have been something that should have been identified to the council before now.
Fair enough. Councilor Jameson?
I suppose if I could, Mayor, thank you for your presentation, and I think you're doing a fine job with your team, Don Kearney, your staff. The due diligence work, I think you're doing it right. You and I, Mayor, and others were involved in a pretty heavy race in April. One thing I learned in that race was that, much to my demise, I suppose, was people wanted this indoor pool. And the details of the size of the pool, the shape, the water flow, the slide in or outdoors, even the cost, though some of those details wasn't important. Getting the job done, getting it built, and I learned that probably the hard way, I would say. But the only issue that I would have in this whole discussion is the additional, I believe it's $3.4 million that's needed. So the gift from the Bradfields is great. God bless them. But the $3.4 million, it's only our job here in the council to make sure that we authorize that money at the time after assessing all the needs of the city. And one thing I did learn for sure is that this indoor pool is not the most important thing to the public. Streets are. And so I just want to make sure we balance this out when we do authorize this funding in one way or another. Because I'm pretty assured that the public wants it to get built and funded. Just how we fund it is really the minor details that we have to work out. And so I just want to make sure that we get a list, maybe from Public Works and other departments about, I guess the $6.6 million is going to come from Parks, and I get that argument. That makes sense. Because amongst the Parks Department, I would bet this is the #1 project. It needs to get done. I get that. But with the rest of the community, we have to consider those other options. So if we have to borrow, several million to finish this out because we identify other projects that just have to get done, we need to consider that before we just vote on this individually. So please, if you could, administration, follow through with us with a list of the items that are getting done that maybe Public Works has identified as transportation, roads that need to get done. Somehow help us through this process so that we don't maybe have to struggle with funding this pool right now without those other considerations. So, but otherwise, good job.
Councilor Erpenbach? No? All righty. I've got a couple things here. I have questions on, or maybe comments that were made. In regard to size, are we increasing the footprint of the building? I know we talked about the interior space and bigger pools, but are we increasing the size of this building?
The footprint of the building is very close to what was originally laid out in the aquatic facility master plan. I think the difference is that just some of the types of spaces have shifted around, but as a general rule, it's very close to what was originally in the aquatic facility master plan.
Parking and everything included.
Parking is still going to be, as part of our design review process, Mike Cooper sits in on that process for us and has identified what's required by building code, and so we're going to meet all those codes as part of this project.
Okay. Another question, more finance related, so for Tracy Turbach, if you know the answer to this. It was just about 2 years ago that we were given the original presentation, and that included the $19.8 million. And it's going to be another year and a half till this is done. What kind of factor are we using for inflation over that period of time? Do we have a number that we're using?
Looking forward or looking backward? I'm not sure.
Well, maybe both if you've got them.
Well, we, of course, the inflation going backward is really looking at what our consultants are telling us it's going to cost today to build, and that's once we lock in those prices and begin to bid out packages, then those costs are locked in. It's their job really to determine whether or not they can fulfill their obligation for the contract that's been bid. So looking forward, I guess, unless there's a delay, in those escalation costs in construction are not really a concern for the city, as long as we don't delay the project. And looking back, I think because that was one of the four major bullet points that I mentioned in terms of the kind of the reason behind the additional investment, we had talked about somewhere around $1 million of that increase had been related to inflation and construction cost escalation.
From now till the completion?
Well, from looking back to when the project was first provided a cost estimate.
So $1 million looking back, and so probably close to $1 million looking forward.
It would be, yeah. I mean, it's very significant. We're told that in general construction costs are escalating at double-digit rates. So I mean, it's not, those dollars add up very, very quickly on a project of this size.
Okay. The other thing I'm fairly reluctant to bring this up, but a couple of years ago, as part of our budgeting process, we took $1.5 million out of our pool budget, and we put it to a county project that we're still waiting to get built. And no offense, Councilor Urbanbach, I know that's a project that you've been very supportive of, and I voted for that myself. But we did remove $1.5 million from this pool budget some time ago. Councilor?
If I might, just and it's a project that I've been very active with, and that the city's been active with over the years, in trying to build that archive center that would help to preserve the courthouse museum, which is such a landmark in our community. That you're right, though, that it's a three-way split. We put $1.3 million in. The county's supposed to put in $1.3 million, and then we have $1.3 million from the sale of the land, part of the land that was given for that project. I would not disagree with you that we're at a point where something needs to happen with that project, that our money can only sit there so long. Law allows us to keep it and let it roll over a couple or 3 years in a row. But there has to be a point where we be realistic about this. And I guess, I would say, I'll say this publicly, this is what's been floating around in my mind. By the 1st of June, when we start talking about 2016 budget, we better know what's happening with that money. And if it's not, then let's talk.
And my point to bringing this up is, like I said, 2 years ago we talked about 19 point whatever million. We're adding $2 million in time, and we've kind of pilfered our budget for the pool. We robbed from that piggy bank already. Now, we've taken over $3 million out of this project just by time and by doing these things. So when we look at it, I don't think we should be surprised by that increased cost.
I think that's
Other
fair.
comments, questions? Councilor Anderson?
One question. Tracy talked about when this gets bid out, then we'll pretty much have when is this going to be bid out? I see pool construction in the spring, but when are we planning on bidding this out? I don't know who may answer that.
I'll, in general terms, just say, but Tony Wiseman from Sioux Falls Construction, if you have more detailed questions. There's 3 bid packages for this project, and the first bid package will be scheduled, I believe, Tony, in March for the foundations. But So it's very similar to, it's a construction manager at risk job. So as we progress through the design, it's very prudent to get ahead of bid packages as they get done with design. And so he'll be moving forward, Sioux Falls Construction will be moving forward with foundation bids, even though we're not quite yet done with design because there's enough design work done for a foundation bids to start letting out. So, but there are 3 bid packages and the first one is in March. If you want further information, I can bring Tony up.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Other questions from the council, comments? All righty. First in, I'm sure, a long series of discussions we're going to have on the pool. So thank everybody for their time. I just also want, I know I heard from one of Councilor Stagger's students that he's giving extra credit today for attending this event. So we have several students here in the crowd. Welcome them. And I know we have several of our Parks Board members here, as well as former Councilor Jim Enneman. So welcome to everybody, and thank you for being here. So with that, we will adjourn our meeting.